Have you ever sat across the table from your grown child, maybe over a cup of coffee, and heard them say something that just didn't sit right with you? Something that made your stomach twist just a little, but you brushed it off because, well, they're your child. You love them. You've seen them grow from a baby in your arms to an adult with opinions, dreams, and struggles. So when they say something harsh or dismissive, it's easy to make excuses. They're just tired. They didn't mean it. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. But what if I told you some of those phrases, those subtle, hurtful things they say, aren't just off-handed comments? What if those words are signs, clear signs, that the relationship is out of balance, and even worse, that it may be hurting you? Now, I'm not talking about the usual disagreements. Every parent and adult child will go through that. That's part of life. We all have moments of frustration or confusion, but I'm talking about patterns, about words that reveal a mindset, a lack of respect, a lack of care. Words that, when spoken repeatedly or with intention, can chip away at your dignity, your confidence, and your peace of mind. This video isn't about giving up on your children. It's about standing up for yourself. It's about recognizing when a line has been crossed and having the strength to step away from people, even your own family, when they've stopped treating you with love and respect. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard your son or daughter say, "You were never really there for me," with bitterness in their voice, years after you've done everything you could? Worked 2 jobs, made sacrifices, poured your whole heart into raising them. It cuts deep, doesn't it? It makes you question everything. But here's what I want to remind you. You are not perfect, but you gave what you had. And when someone refuses to acknowledge that, refuses to see your efforts because they're too focused on blame, you need to protect your peace. So let's talk about these phrases, the ones that don't just hurt, but reveal something bigger, something unhealthy. The first one is this: "You owe me." Now that might come in many forms. Maybe they don't say it direct. Maybe it's hidden in comments like, "After everything I've been through because of you," or "I wouldn't be struggling if you had done a better job." But the message is the same. You owe them your time, your money, your guilt. It's as if they're holding your love hostage, waiting for you to pay a debt you never agreed to. And that's not love. That's manipulation. You see, love from a child should be rooted in gratitude. It doesn't mean they can't express hurt or ask tough questions about the past. But when they demand repayment for the way they were raised, when they weaponize your role as a parent, that's when it becomes toxic. You don't owe your adult children your retirement fund. You don't owe them your emotional energy every single day, especially when it's being drained without care or appreciation. If a grown child is using guilt to control you, that's not family. That's emotional black. The second phrase to watch out for is this: "You're just old, you wouldn't understand." Now that one stings in a different way, doesn't it? It's not loud or aggressive, but it's dismissive. It makes you feel invisible, like your wisdom, your experiences, and everything you've learned in your life somehow count for nothing. You may have lived through wars, recessions, family losses, personal victories, heartbreaks, miracles, and all of that is brushed aside with one word. Let me tell you something right now. Being older doesn't make you irrelevant. In fact, it makes you more valuable. You've seen what many haven't. You've survived what others can't imagine. But when your own child uses your age to silence you or ignore you, they're not being progressive. They're being disrespectful. Don't accept it. You have every right to share your opinion, your guidance, and your concern, especially when it comes from love. Age isn't a weakness. It's a strength. And if someone you raised forgets that, it's not your job to convince them. It's your job to protect your worth. Sometimes that means stepping back emotionally, or even physically, until they remember who you are and what you've. The third phrase that should raise every red flag in your heart is this: "If you don't help me, I'll figure it out without you." At first glance, that might sound independent, even admirable, but listen closely to the tone behind it. Is it said with maturity, Or is it a threat? Is it a declaration of self-reliance? Or an ultimatum meant to pressure you into doing what they want? Too often, adult children use this kind of language to manipulate. They create false choices. Either you give them what they want, or they walk away. And as a parent, that's terrifying. The fear of losing your connection with them, of being shut out of their lives, can lead you to give in again and again. But that kind of dynamic isn't built on love. It's built on fear. And love, real love, is never a threat. I need your help, and I appreciate it. Not, give it to me or I'll leave. If your child is only close when they need something, if their affection depends on what you provide, then what you have isn't a relationship, it's a transaction, and you are worth more than that. You've spent decades building your life, your home, your memories. This stage of life is meant to be peaceful. It's meant to be filled with joy, rest, purpose, and genuine connection, not demands, pressure, or walking on eggshells. I know it's not easy, walking away even emotionally from someone you love with your whole heart. It goes against every instinct you have as a parent. But sometimes, love means saying enough. Sometimes, protecting yourself is the most loving thing you can do, because it teaches the other person how to treat you. It sets a boundary that says, I will not be hurt like this. You're not abandoning your children by drawing a line. You're reminding them that respect goes both ways, that your value doesn't decrease with age, that your love is a gift, not a debt to be collected. And I promise you, the moment you reclaim your dignity, the moment you stop tolerating disrespect, just because it comes from family, you'll feel lighter, freer, strong. Now, let's keep going, because there are still more phrases to talk about, and each one reveals something powerful about how we're treated and how we deserve to be treated. When someone you love starts to treat you like an afterthought, when their words carry more control than care, it's not just disappointing, it's exhausting. And if that person happens to be your own child, it's heartbreaking in a way that few people talk about. Let's keep going, because what we're uncovering here could save you years of heartache and emotional strain. The next phrase to be cautious of is this one: you're the reason I turned out this way. Now, I know that parenting comes with mistakes. Every single parent, no matter how loving, has moments they wish they could do differently. That's part of being human. But when an adult child constantly blames you for who they are today, without ever taking responsibility for their own choices, it becomes a cycle of blame. And it's a heavy burden that no parent deserves to carry forever. You might hear it in moments of conflict, or when they're going through a tough time. Maybe they say, if you had been more supportive, I wouldn't have anxiety. Or if you'd raised me differently, I'd have a better life now. And again, because you're their parent, it hits hard. You start questioning every decision you made, every time you said no, every sacrifice you thought was the right one. But here's the truth: raising a child doesn't mean you take on lifelong guilt for their adult outcomes. They have free will. They've made decisions as grown people, and those decisions are theirs. Blaming you for their shortcomings might make them feel better in the moment, but it keeps them from growing, it keeps them stuck, and it keeps you trapped in a cycle of shame. You didn't raise a perfect child, just like you weren't a perfect parent, but if you raised them with love, tried your best, and kept showing up even when things were hard, then you've done your job. The rest, that's on them. Don't let them hang their life around your neck like a chain. And if they continue to do so, despite your efforts to support them and move forward, if they can't have a single conversation without dragging you through the past, then it may be time to take a step back. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much to keep letting them hurt you this way. Now, the next phrase might come out during heated arguments, or sometimes even in a moment of cold calm. And it's this one: you never really loved me. If you've ever heard your child say this to you, I want you to stop and take a deep breath right now, because I know that cuts deep. That one sentence can feel like someone took everything you've ever done, every hug, every meal cooked, every late night waiting for them to come home, and threw it all out the window. But let's be clear, That phrase isn't just hurtful, it's cruel. Love isn't always perfect, and sometimes love doesn't look the way people think it should. Maybe you weren't overly affectionate, maybe you weren't always available, but you gave what you had. And love isn't measured by grand gestures, it's measured by consistency, by showing up, by sticking around, by making the hard choices even when they weren't appreciated. For someone to erase all of that with one phrase, it's not just unfair, it's a form of emotional attack. It's often used to win an argument, to make you feel so devastated that you give in, apologize or beg for forgiveness for things you didn't even do. You cannot spend your golden years defending yourself to someone who has chosen to forget your love. If they're willing to weaponize your heart against you, that's not a child seeking healing, it's someone looking to control. And sometimes the strongest act of love is letting go. You don't have to keep proving yourself to someone who has already made up their mind. Real love doesn't need to be convinced. It can see even when things aren't perfect. If your child truly loved you, they wouldn't try to rip your heart out with words like that. They wouldn't want to see you cry. They wouldn't want to be the source of your pain. Which brings us to another phrase that reveals so much more than it seems. You're just being dramatic. This one might not sound as cruel at first. It might even be said with a laugh. But make no mistake, it's a form of dismissal. It's a way to silence you, to downplay your feelings, to make you feel like you're overreacting every time you speak your truth. And let's be honest, how many times in life have you been told to quiet down, to toughen up, to not make a fuss, especially as you've gotten older? Maybe you've noticed your opinions don't carry the same weight they once did. People interrupt more, they talk over you, they nod politely, but don't really listen. So when your own child brushes off your feelings with a smug, "You're just being dramatic," it reinforces a painful idea that your emotions don't matter, that your perspective is outdated, that your voice doesn't belong in the conversation. But let me tell you right now, your voice matters more than ever. You've lived, you've learned, you've endured, you've loved, and your perspective isn't dramatic. It's rooted in experience. It's rich with meaning. And when someone, especially someone you raised, tries to make you feel small for expressing your truth, that's not just disrespect, that's silencing. And you do not have to accept that. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to speak without fear of being mocked. And if the people closest to you can't give you that space, you are absolutely within your rights to create space of your own, to step away, to draw that boundary, to say, "No, I will not be dismissed," because this part of your life, this chapter you're in, is not about pleasing people who don't value you. It's about standing strong in who you are. It's about rediscovering peace, dignity, and it's about living fully without being dragged down by the emotional weight of someone else's immaturity. So as we keep talking through these phrases, I want you to remember, every single one of these examples isn't just about words, they're about patterns of disrespect, patterns of control, patterns of manipulation. And the moment you start to recognize them for what they are, you begin to take your power back. This is not about turning your back on your family. It's about turning your face toward yourself, toward the self-respect, the peace, and the clarity you deserve. You're not too old to set boundaries. You're not too old to start fresh. You're not too old to say, "That's enough." And if any part of your heart is aching while hearing these words, if you're remembering a conversation, or a look, or a moment that made you feel small, know this: you are not alone. So many parents carry this silent pain. But today, you've given yourself permission to name it. And soon we'll talk about the final phrases that truly matter, because they reveal the deepest truths about where you stand and how to move forward with strength. Let's keep going, because the next phrase we need to talk about might seem innocent on the surface, but underneath, it carries a message that can quietly erode your sense of value. It's this: "I didn't ask for your opinion." Now, of course, everyone has the right to choose whose advice they follow. Your adult children are allowed to make their own decisions, even ones you may disagree with. That's part of growing up. You know that, you've accepted that. But when your child snaps back at you with a sharp, "I didn't ask," or worse, No one needs your opinion. It cuts deeper than they probably realize, because what they're really saying in that moment is that your wisdom doesn't matter, that your voice is no longer welcome, that the years you've spent gathering experience, learning hard lessons, navigating this world, somehow don't count anymore just because the calendar turned another page. It's a hard thing to face, especially when all you were trying to do was offer some guidance, not because you think you know better, not because you want control, but because you love them, because you care. And when someone shuts that down cold, when they act as if your insight is a burden rather than a blessing, it creates a wedge that doesn't just divide, it isolates. If your child constantly silences you, brushes off your thoughts, or makes you feel like your presence in their life is conditional based on how quiet you stay, or how much you agree with them, that's not mutual respect, that's control. And no parent, no matter how old, deserves to be pushed to the sidelines of their own family. You're allowed to have opinions, you're allowed to speak, and even if they don't take your advice, they should be able to hear it without contempt. A respectful adult child doesn't have to agree with you, but they should always honor your place in their life. If they don't, you need to ask yourself, are you showing up for a relationship that no longer shows up for you? Now we've saved perhaps the most painful phrase for last, and I want to speak on this with care. It's the moment your child says, "You're the one who needs help, not me." Now there's a context where this might be said out of concern. Maybe you've been struggling, or they think something is wrong, and they want to help. That's one thing. But too often, this phrase is used not out of love, but as a deflection, as a way to dodge their own accountability by turning the focus back on you. Let's say you're trying to address an issue. Maybe it's the way they treat you. Maybe it's how they speak to you, or how they've been showing up, or not showing up in your life. And instead of hearing you out, they say, "You're the one who's crazy. You're the one who needs help. You're overreacting again." That's not care, that's gaslighting. And it's dangerous, because the moment you start questioning your own reality, your own feelings, your own memory of events, you become vulnerable. You become easier to manipulate. You start shrinking, doubting, apologizing for things you never did wrong. And that's exactly how emotional control works. So, let me remind you of something very important. Needing support is human. But being told you need help as a way to silence you, to shame you, or to shift blame, that's not support, that's an attack. And when it comes from your own child, it's even more damaging, because they know exactly where your soft spots. If a conversation leaves you feeling like you're losing your grip on what's true, like you're always the problem, like nothing you say matters, unless it aligns with their version of events, you have every right to step back. You are not required to stay emotionally available to someone who uses your love against you. Now, if you're still with me, still listening, still nodding quietly to yourself, I want to tell you something that might feel long overdue. You deserve respect, not just tolerance, not just polite conversation. You deserve real respect. The kind that sees your heart, your effort, your history, the kind that listens when you speak, the kind that honors the fact that you are the reason your child is even here today. And I know some of this has been hard to hear. Maybe it stirred up old wounds or recent ones. Maybe you've been holding back tears or memories that you don't talk about often. That's okay, because acknowledging these things doesn't make you bitter. It makes you brave. It means you're finally ready to stop carrying the pain quietly. It means you're ready to put yourself first, not because you've stopped loving your children, but because you've started loving your children, but because you've started loving yourself again. So where do you go from here? You start by honoring how you stop brushing things under the rug just to keep the peace. You give yourself permission to draw lines. Maybe that means fewer phone calls. Maybe that means saying no to last-minute demand. Maybe it means having one final conversation that begins with, "I won't accept being spoken to that way anymore." And maybe in time, they'll come around. Maybe they'll see what they couldn't see before. But even if they don't, you will have chosen dignity over damage. You will have chosen peace over people-pleasing. And that, my friend, is one of the most powerful decisions you can make in this season of life. You've earned your rest, you've earned your voice, and you deserve to spend your years surrounded by people who see your value, not people who question it. If this message has touched something inside you, if it's helped you see your situation a little more clearly, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. You never know who else might be reading and feeling the exact same thing. And if you found this helpful, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel. We're here to support you with honest, meaningful conversations that help you stand tall, live well, and love yourself more every single day. Here's to protecting your peace, honoring your worth, and walking forward with strength. Because you are not alone, and you are not powerless. You are a person of experience, of resilience, of deep love, and you deserve a life that reflects that. Here's to living your best life at any age. I'll see you in the next video. Stay strong.